got the first and second declension, just to be sure. Alyssa, you can do that too. Guys, I'm gonna be real grumpy today about the books. Please find the books in here. Don't read books like in my class. I'm just saying, because you always do. Prudence has most of her stack. Oh, she's not over second. Lady's got one of her first moves. Ray's got first. I already said. Get something out here. Feasts at 10 o'clock. Like, we have all of the food at 10 o'clock. It's weird. Like, I don't know. That seems like a medical. We've discussed this being like a snack class. But if you're snacking to the point where you literally can't even write up the first declension like your teacher's telling you, then like something bad has happened. Something has gone astray. If I was Chartier, you just wouldn't be able to eat it all, right? Like isn't that the issue? That's why y'all eating here. Okay. Huh. So we'll brush up on 18 because we like sort of started 18, but barely. I did do that homework, which is impressive given how crazy last week was testing. But we'll actually start it in earnest this week, and we're going to have a 2-week cycle. So we won't finish chapter 18 until the first week of February next week. So we're still kind of in that zone of it could be a balance of being boring for the 2.5 kids and very hard for the 1.5 kids. But I think it's gotten closer to like 1.5 kids are actually, it's not impossibly hard, and 2.5 kids, I think you are doing good to be reviewing all of this, and it's not too redundant for you. We'll do spot translating tomorrow as usual. On Wednesday, you guys are going to do the next 5 exercises from the textbook, same part of the textbook. Avery, give that a shot, but like I said, I'm going to try to still figure out something. It's just not quite ready yet in terms of like a packet I can use to catch you up. Should try to play Jeopardy again on Thursday and then Friday. Like I said, it'll be a mix of 17 and 18. So I'll pick, this is kind of weird, but no, I want to pick 15 words from 18 and 17. So it's 15 words total, but I'm drawing from 2 chapters since y'all never took a chapter 17 vocab quiz. And then, yeah, I'll have the first declension in there. So hands up if you got or the vast majority of the first declension. It's actually important for me to know. Okay, so most of y'all are fine with the first declension. Raise your hand for second declension, just curious. Raise your hand if you're able to do second. So there's less, even for the 2.5, but these boys seem to know the 2.5. Okay, so, first declension. This should be an easy 10 points. It's going to be 10 blanks, right? Because I'm not going to have the vocative on the quiz. So think about like just filling it out as quickly as possible when you start the quiz. So putting an A here, that should be a given. I think everyone knows there's some A for the nominative singular. But then do the AE here, here, and here, and you're almost halfway done at that point. And remember R, that's good. If you remember East goes here and here, you want to skip one, right? East is kind of straddling the more distinct accusatives. A and an AS go there. And then this last A is almost like the opposite of like a normal A. If you think of macrons as being making something the opposite of something without a macron, it would make sense. But just think of how you want to like fill it out really quickly, whether you're going down the singular side or doing nominative singular, then plural, genitive singular, plural, or whatever it is. So make sure you can do it really quickly. So we'll start every class this week this way, and we'll move on to second declension next week, which like for those of you who are comfy with first, make second your priority, because by the end of February, we'll have the fourth declension in here. Again, for some people, for the first time for most of us. And so you want this to be very handy in the old hippocampus. Myths Monday, guys. I vow to talk about myths and various other things on Mondays for the rest of the semester, and I will keep that promise. So we talked about her sister and all of her siblings. But, you know, we started off talking about the wives of, like, the big 3 Olympian dudes, Hades, Zeus, and Poseidon. And then we talked about Hera a good bit just anyways, because she's the wife of Zeus. But Demeter and her poor sister Hestia don't get as much credit. So we talked about Demeter last week. Turns out she's more important than we might realize, being the mother of Persephone, the center of this, like, weird death cult in ancient Greece over 2,000 years ago. Hestia here, that's her Greek name. Vesta is her Roman name. She was a hearth goddess. So whereas Demeter is like everything with having to do with nature and the seasons, she's more of a domestic goddess, literally. And that like when ancient Greek families would sit down to eat 2,500 years ago, they would pray to her before anybody else. In the same way that people still pray at the table, at the dinner table, potentially, if it's like a special meal or depending on how religious people are. But it would be the same thing, except she's kind of the focal point there in terms of the worship that's happening. But families would have like different household gods that were all kind of in a hierarchical kind of relationship to Hestia, and that they were like her, not her underlings, but like she was like the head of these domestic gods that existed. When she goes over to Rome and she's called Vesta, her worship is a little different. It mostly centers around this college of priestesses called the Vestals, and it was their job to keep this like sacred Vestal flame burning all of the time. And they housed in this temple of Vesta. Apparently, this Palladium object, which goes back to the Trojan War, and the Penates, the household gods that Aeneas brought over, apparently. So, of course, we don't think Aeneas was real. So, what did they actually have that they thought was the thing that he brought over? Who knows? But they claim to house all of these sacred objects. And it was a weird kind of system. If you went into this college of priestesses, it was something that happened at a very young age. I think families of like nobility and rich Romans would supply their daughters to join this college. It was kind of like being a nun, and that like you were venerated and like thought really highly of. But it seemed like a very limiting life. I don't think you had too much freedom outside of the temple. You couldn't marry or have really any relationship with people in like a normal kind of way. If you were caught having like an affair with a guy, you'd be buried alive. So there's that. But yeah, that's something that's distinct to the Roman worship of Vesta versus the Greek worship of Hestia, which more had to do with like, oh, we have a really good dinner tonight. Let's make sure we pray to Hestia and like offer her our thanks. So there's that. Okay, this is the family tree we've been circling around. These are the 6 main Olympians here: Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Hades, Demeter, and Hestia. He's got no kids apparently. And what I think is interesting about this family tree is that it shows you that Zeus basically supplies all of the younger Olympians. So with Hera, he has Ares and Hephaestus. With the human woman Metis, he has Athena. She comes out of his head after he has a really bad headache because he doesn't eat something weird. With Leto, he has Apollo and Diana. With Maya, he has Hermes. Similarly, Dionysus, who she gets smelted into a smoldering pile of ash while she's pregnant with Bacchus or Dionysus. And then Zeus, of course, what would any guy do? Has to sew Bacchus's fetus into his leg so that he can reach maturity and actually be born properly as Dionysus. And then Aphrodite, sometimes some versions of Dione. What, Sarah? I'm not going to go back. I just realized I forgot to cover something up. But, just because, yeah, like, that's a thing. Yeah, Hera's his sister, but that's his wife. It's like different with the gods. I don't think it's even really comparable to like, yeah. And I think the Greeks. We've talked about this before, or I have with various classes. I think what it comes down to is that Greeks are trying to figure out like, okay, whatever all of this is, whatever reality is, like maybe the gods created whoever these gods are, that they're the ones who created it. But if they created everything, like they were probably it's like chicken and the egg kind of thing. Like, how do we not have our gods at some point? I don't know, I guess like procreate, even if they're technically siblings. It's like they didn't have the creativity to be like, well, maybe there's like 2 different families of gods that just like come out of nowhere. Or something like that. I don't know. Chloe? Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, right. Like this is the original line that goes back to the first generation, the primordial gods, Uranus and Gaia, heaven and earth, Cronus and Rhea, the Titans, and then them. And so yeah, and their gods, it's like different. They don't have like physical bodies, if that makes a difference, like energy or something. Anyway, reception studies that we'll talk about on Mondays. That is the subfield of study within classical departments all over the world lately that allows classicists, which people formerly thought of as having their nose stuck in a book reading dead languages and tongues all day long. The idea of reception studies allows people like them and me to investigate and analyze culture or even pop culture that is responding or reacting to classical culture. That's all that reception studies means. is when you're looking at a point B that is reacting to a point A that is the point A needs to like be part of the classical world. And so it can be anything from Assassin's Creed video games to like Iron Maiden lyrics to stupid Disney movies, right? And so yeah, I'm not talking about Hercules because I'm a goofball, but because it's like a real thing. Like there's people as we speak, right, like editing their dissertation on Disney's adaptation of various world myths, which we'll get to. But so let's talk about Hercules a little bit. It's like I talked about Harry Potter. I finally actually addressed the Harry Potter spells, which has always been a thing hanging over my shoulder. Now a week later, the next most obvious thing, like painfully obvious, is like Hercules. But so how does this production come about? It came out when I was like a few years younger than y'all are now. But it's adapting a 3,000-year-old myth. So what made the Walt Disney Company decide to adapt a 3,000-year-old myth? It's important to investigate the context of Disney's animation productions up to this point. If we're going to do that, unfortunately, this is very low res. Okay, it's a screen cap of a YouTube video, so I will have to point out what everything actually is. But back in the 30s, when things first started getting going, we just have 5 classics pumped out in a row: Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, and Bambi. Those are unassailable classics. They hold up. Now, do I like Dumbo and Bambi? No. Dumbo because it's boring, and racist. Bambi because it's really, really way too sad. But Pinocchio's fine. Fantasia's sick. And Snow White holds up kind of. And they're ancient. That's like 70, that's 80 years old? What? What?
Yeah, this random dude who comes over and kisses her without permission while she's like practically dead.
All right, well, now that you mention it,
Oh my god. No, that's
her and Sleeping Beauty, which I don't see Sleeping Beauty. That must be somewhere in here. Her and Sleeping Beauty, that does involve a dude kissing like. Anyway.
I guess the real story, like the baby is actually he's just kissing a cute
Yeah.
15-year-old.
With these fairy tales that are largely based off like Grimm fairy tales and like older Western folklore, I don't think it was investigated too much. Or do we really know Snow White's that old? Do we-
yeah, they said it's like, oh yeah.
Maybe the prince was like 17. He's a young prince.
Yeah.
He looks like he's like 30. But I mean, they don't hold up to realism, right? Realism is something that we still don't see in our children's entertainment. Frozen isn't realistic.
I think that's like the point. There should be realism, but at the same time, if you're gonna make a movie about a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old,
Right. And kind of deconstructing it and looking at it through a realist lens. That's something that we didn't start doing until later with movies like Enchanted and I sort of Frozen. I've never seen Frozen. That are reacting to the Disney princess mythos, which is like, yeah, like inherently kind of messed up, or not messed up, but just like it doesn't make sense. Some of them, I guess. What?
First of all, how does he not remember what she looked like? Like, if he's in love with her, how does he not remember what she looks like?
Her makeup was really good, maybe, I guess. She's one of those people who
So,
just.
like, I'm not going to remember you by your face or your hair or anything. I'm going to remember you by your feet.
But
What?
I
Did
could.
no other girl wear her shoe size in the whole
Exactly.
entire Is she like a
It was a half size, I guess. But if she got back into her peasant garb, like that compared to her decked out in like enchanted dress and like jewelry kind of stuff that she got from the fairy godmother, that might be a very different looking person, you know? Like totally normal, no makeup, no magical dress, versus fairy godmother magical dress, and presumably someone beat that face. What? Oh, there you go. So that's like that actually works within the universe of the movie. I like that. All right, but anyway,
When they remade Cinderella, because then they had the part where the sisters have their
oh yeah, that's crazy. Please interrupt again, I guess, Sarah, but share it to the whole class because I wanted the first few periods to like share more while I'm talking about Disney nonsense, but they haven't so far. What? Well, are you sharing with us or Bailey? I can't.
everyone.
What is
She
your?
just adds in every once in a while on how I'm wrong.
And you're just still saying these movies are like weird.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
some of them. The one I did in One Dalmatian, where they all born with the same mother?
No, they were. They were all different. No, remember? Because like they're all from like 7 different. They're all different puppies that Cruella de Vil kidnapped, and there only like 15 of them. And then they adopted all of them.
There was adopted. Okay, I actually forgot that too. I like the live action Dalmatians.
In time for children. It's not even a realistic thing.
I guess not. I guess not. But speaking, yeah. It's kind of like some YouTubers have made a literal career out of nitpicking like Marvel movies, and it's like at the end of the day, it's like this is like a children's movie. Like it's not. Yeah, leave it alone. Leave Britney alone. But anyway, so 5 classics right off the bat. They're missing Sleeping Beauty, and I'm wondering where she is. That's my favorite Disney princess by far. The art I think is beautiful. I'm not her. The movie. The art is really, really good. What did you think I was saying? It's weird. You're a weirdo. Okay, 40s guys. In the 40s, there's nothing. I know y'all can't see because of the low res, but wartime era. Not all the dudes, but like a lot of people were overseas, getting blown up in like Germany or Japan, and so we don't have any classes coming from the 40s. The 50s, they start to get back on their kind of like rhythm. We have Cinderella. Presumably, Sleeping Beauty is 59, I think, at the end of the decade. Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Jungle Book, Dalmatians, Alice in Wonderland. So yeah, if like after this initial period, people are like, oh, maybe Disney isn't actually good at animation because like none of these movies. I can't even read them, but even if I could, I could tell I don't know. But anyway, so they're doing good in their third phase, which it's called the Silver Age. Apparently, what, Sadie?
Wait, can we talk about Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan? Because there are some major problems. They were like one of my favorites. Yeah, I love those movies. Those movies are really good. I like them. But there are some like first of all, how is Alice able to fit down a rabbit hole? Because she's
magic. Well, and the whole, it's like magic.
It's tired and God knows. And Peter Pan, these kids just decided to go with this random boy and they're just totally fine with the fact that he can fly.
It sounds, Peter Pan's dead? Why is he dead? And so that's not real, by the way, because there is a Peter Pan book. You can read it. They're not dead. But as a metaphor, I like that. And it sounds like some of you, Sadie included, maybe you forgot about a little thing called magic and imagination. And
Okay, I just have one more thing.
What?
In Peter Pan, when all of the kids are telling their parents that this random boy called Peter Pan is coming to visit them, they're totally fine with it. Yeah, that's the part that really surprised me. The parents tell me
I don't know. It's all about being open-minded to magic. But anyway, guys, this slide was supposed to last like no more than 3 minutes. Okay, the important thing is that through the 50s and 60s, which is like when my parents were little kids, they're popping off and like doing good stuff again. But the 70s and 80s, we got Aristocats, which I like. I like it, but it's not like a big popular one. That looks like Fox in the House, way too depressing. Robin Hood, it's good, and furries are yeah, Robin Hood's cool. And then Sarah, stop screaming back there. Okay, and then The Great Mouse Detective towards the end. But in general, this is not a very illustrious era for them in terms of where are the princesses. There's no like blockbuster musicals happening. Aristocats does have some good music in it, but it's not quite on the level of the production that we see in something like Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty. This one?
No, the left. Yeah, that one.
I can't tell.
I think that's Piece of
Rescuers Down Under? I haven't seen Rescuers too much. What, Alyssa?
Okay, so can we talk about something?
Luke, what?
So the
Maybe.
worst Disney movie that was ever made, The Black Cauldron. Have you guys not heard of that
So it's
one?
not Disney, that's on Blue. But that's because it doesn't have the Disney. Oh, maybe it is Disney.
It is
But
Disney.
it's a weird Disney.
It's like old. It's like a really old, like straight to VHS movie. It was the most terrifying thing ever. If you don't know what the Black Cauldron is, it's like this kid
But it's cool.
who like goes out and he meets this princess, and this princess is like, oh yeah, this dark lord like took over my country, and like now, and then they meet this like weird dog goblin thing,
Yeah.
and then like they have to go destroy this Skeletor looking person.
I like it though. But okay, so the Bronze Age was not good. People thought at that point that Disney's like golden age was literally behind them, and just in general, in an overarching sense, it was not going to happen again like it was still happening in the Silver Age until these dudes come along, Luke and Keaton, who they directed The Great Mouse Detective in the middle of the 80s, which was not that popular. I've never seen it. But after that, they kick off what is called the Disney Renaissance with Little Mermaid in 1989. And that was the first princess in like almost more than 2 decades, which is crazy, right? But so the Little Mermaid, and they're like, oh, so like Disney can still make really honestly, I think groundbreaking technically in terms of like the level of the animation. Though Ghibli is always better. Rescuers Down Under in '90, not my favorite, but I remember seeing it as a kid. It's okay. It's some scary parts. Beauty and the Beast '91. They have that crazy scene with the revolving camera in the ballroom.
That was like, I think that was one of the first times where they like experienced like they were messing around with 3D animation. Because Aladdin was the first movie where they actually used 3D animation.
So that's on that. So Aladdin's actual CGI. That scene in the ballroom, it looks like CGI. It isn't actually. It's just like insanely good hand-drawn animation. Not my favorite movie, but it looks gorgeous and some good music. Aladdin is '92. Not a good-looking movie to me by any stretch, but a very rollicking and good, fun time. No, I like Aladdin too.
I like Aladdin, but I wish they I was watching the movie, and I wish they had added some parts because there was like an entire song where Aladdin was like singing to his mom about how he just wanted to impress her, and then his mom was like lecturing him. She's like, "You lost sight of what's really important."
Aladdin had a mom?
Yeah, I guess in the beginning, because of the movie, he had a mom.
Okay. So they're on a roll year after year here. They skip 1 year, but it's for a good reason because Lion King is like the end all be all of '90s Disney animation. I mean, yeah, I'd say like you can't really touch Lion King. Still makes me cry to this day.
They ruined it with the new Lion King movie.
Yeah.
It was
It was
terrible.
stupid. It was stupid. But I still paid for a ticket. Pocahontas in '95. What we're seeing at that point is that they've taken an interest in this kind of international storytelling. Little Mermaid, that's a Hans Christian Andersen thing. That's like a weird Dutch dude who wrote fairy tales like not that long ago. But then with Aladdin, Lion King, and Pocahontas, we're like in Arabia, we're in Africa, we're talking about like indigenous people in the Americas. And so you can tell that they're like purposely kind of sourcing different like parts of the world. Hunchback in '96 is like French people, I guess, and they're a little after the French Revolution before. Hunchback is a technically amazing, beautiful movie, but I remember my family not being impressed by it. We walked out of the theater like, that ain't it. Whereas the next year was finally Hercules. And the last 3 movies of the Renaissance, the flawless little trinity of movies. I don't really watch Tarzan, but it's beautifully animated.
Tarzan. Tarzan's like my favorite movie.
Really?
One of my friends. Okay, do you notice that in the part like in the beginning when Kala first finds Tarzan, you can see the parents' dead feet.
Oh yeah, there's some dark stuff in Tarzan.
I
And
didn't
like
notice
with
that.
the tiger killing the. But of these 3, by far Mulan my favorite, then Tarzan. But Tarzan is technically a better movie than Hercules. We'll talk about those reasons why. But like as far as like beautiful, visually groundbreaking Disney movies, it's Tarzan, it's Hunchback, and some of the ones I don't like that much. Mulan. All I like in Mulan is when things explode. The smoke always looks cool. What, Sadie?
Okay, so in Tarzan, when he's learning how to talk, he speaks with an American accent, even though the only stuff he's heard is like the good English accent.
Maybe when he was a little baby, he was American, so like it was still
No,
kind
he
of.
was raised by
He was born in the jungle. Was he born?
No,
in
he
the
wasn't born in the jungle. He was born on a boat.
So maybe in the boat he heard American.
There's also a theory that Elsa's parents were pregnant
Right.
when they went on the ship, and then they had Tarzan when the ship crashed.
Wasn't that soft confirmed? Yeah.
I think it was, yeah.
But yeah, so like anyway, they just go from like doing not much in the '80s to because of these 2 directors whose names I don't actually remember. They just like wild out in the '90s, and it's really good. It turns out these dudes actually the whole time just wanted to direct their Treasure Island adaptation called Treasure Planet, which is the Treasure Island set in space. It takes them. Disney's like, oh, we'll let you do that eventually. Just give us another Little Mermaid. And they're like, can we do it now? And they're like, no, just give us one more. They eventually do direct this, and it makes no money in the box office, but it was okay. It was well animated.
I never watched the Treasure
It's kind of cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's solid. There's no music, but anyway, what I think Hercules kind of predicts the end of the Renaissance happening with Mulan and Tarzan, while also predicting what happens after the Renaissance, which is like not probably quite as good. Things like Emperor's New Groove, let's see. Does this have? Oh, it has posters. So you can't see them, but it's so Emperor's New Groove. It's called the dinosaurs. Or the last. The dinosaurs is like they all died. It's really sad. Something about a bear. Lilo and Stitch. I like Lilo and Stitch. And then so I wish I could tell what they were. Some of them I can't tell, but a lot of them it's just like no one remembers them.
Yeah, a lot of them were straight to VHS.
Yeah.
Like Pocahontas too. I don't know why they made a second Pocahontas. They released it, honestly.
I'm sure it's it.
We all loved like another guy.
But
Exactly. I was like,
and I thought this was interesting. Apparently, Emperor's New Groove originally was going to be a more serious musical called Empire of the Sun, I think. It was like drawing more from Incan mythology, like actual South American mythology, and it changed to this really lighthearted kind of stupid comedy towards the end. Who's actually seen Emperor's New Groove? It's one of my okay. So y'all mostly know it. My some characters haven't, but that to me, it's like it's kind of drawing on the same humor that Hercules had, which is like very tongue in cheek, kind of like very silly. But it doesn't even have the heart that Hercules had. Like, so anyway, I feel like Hercules predicts these two movies because this is drawing on Chinese folklore. So we have Greek myths, Chinese folklore, and at least initially there was like South American mythology in there. Lucy?
Okay, so you have to like listen to what they're saying in order to get how funny it is. Because at one point you see them out and they're way ahead of
Yzma?
And then Yzma gets there before them. But that's because they had cut out a really big part of the movie too long.
Oh.
So they had to add in the line. How did you get here before us? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
That's funny. Yeah, apparently the production history went way back. And just to be clear, when I saw this in theaters, I probably walked out like, that was the best Disney movie I've ever seen. Like, I thought it was hilarious. But because I think it's like focused on being funny, it doesn't hold up. And it's not like as timeless and
it
classical.
doesn't really have as much of a story as I would like it to have.
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like the aspect of the dude and Cusco fighting was like too much.
I can see that. Yeah, they had that whole
The
falling
conflict
out.
was too much, and at the same time, I feel like there wasn't enough conflict.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Yzma trying to kill the Emperor and running him out was just like kind of stupid.
The
'Cause
humor-
Once he ran out and once he was a llama, she didn't have to care anymore. Why would she keep chasing after him?
I can see that. It's not a problem.
Like once he's a llama, nobody's gonna be like, oh yeah, our Emperor's a llama. Yeah.
So this is all to say that we can place Hercules production-wise, contextually, in the context of the end of like what the pinnacle of Disney, and after this is when we have, and I wish I had time to show this, things like Pixar becoming more prominent, even DreamWorks post Shrek becoming more prominent, and the guy who was heading up Shrek with he had recently gotten fired from Disney, and so Shrek is him making fun of Disney princesses, right? Because the whole conceit of it is like let's make fun of all these like traditional characters and stuff, and it's like wildly popular. Yeah, before even I guess Toy Story is
Disney
started out.
bought DreamWorks a little like recently.
I don't think so.
They do have ESPN though, which is funny.
But just yes, Scally.
Wait, I just don't know that it wasn't originally going to be making that, so like technically it was going to be Oswald, but then the one who was like stole the idea.
Weird. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. I don't even know what that looks like.
Oh, he was just look it up. There's a video game about
There's a video
It's like
game?
this game, and basically like I don't know. It's like Oswald trying to find his way back to Hawaii. Yeah, he was like one of the very first cartoons. I think he was like before Steamboat Willie.
We'll find this, and then I'm going to be very focused for the rest of my Hercules talk. Oh, so he's weird. He looks like an Animaniac. He's basically an Animaniac. That's weird.
Yeah, he is.
Cool.
I think that might have been like where the Animaniacs came from.
If maybe Warner Bros. Ended up with it. All right, guys. Let me talk a little more uninterrupted, maybe, so we can maybe get this actual sunlight today. So just compare the ancient myth with the Disney movie on a very superficial level. Heracles is the son of Zeus and his human one, Alcmene. Of course, Zeus cheats on Hera with all sorts of people, and so his name actually initially is not Heracles. They changed it to Heracles as a way to like be like, oh look, Hera, like now you can't hate him because he has your name. Like that's Hera's name inside of his name. But yeah, she obviously hated him because he represents like her husband's infidelity. So like, why don't you go mess with Mercury or Dionysus or any of the other guys who are the Yeah.
Like she could totally get back at him so easily because she's like such a popular goddess. She could literally get away with it.
I don't know why Heracles is one she picks on specifically. But he goes on to get married to Megara, who's this princess of Thebes, and Hera curses him because she's like holds his grudge against Justin for some reason to make him go crazy. And like this is where it gets like very not Disney Luke and Sarah, is that he's driven crazy by Hera's like brainwash and he like kills his whole family. So clearly Disney's like, oh, we want to adapt it, but we can't touch that part of the story at all. So in the Disney version, he's the son of Zeus and Hera. Like he actually is Hera's son, Bailey. And his human parents are just adopted, and that Hades wants to kill him because of reasons.
Yeah, they didn't really clarify why Hades wanted to be.
Well, there's some lore. I mean, I'm kind of being dismissive. There's lore about like, the Titans getting unleashed because the stars align, and Hades knows that Hercules is the only one who can stop him. And it's all very added on stuff. It's like not from the mythology at all. Yes. Is that in the movie?
It's not in the movie.
I don't think it's in the movie or myth, but that sounds interesting. That would kind of explain some things. Pegasus is something that's added. Okay, Pegasus is more of a thing for anyone. Sort of the P. It's a book series. A lot of people like it's Perseus. That's Perseus' Steve, not Heracles is at any point. But there's all sorts of things like this. They have the Fates. I realize a lot of these stills are really, really dark. But the Fates, these like hag people who like share one eyeball. That's based on a real Greek myth concept, the Moirai or the Latin Parcae. Probably. And they're like seamstress women who lot out someone's life and they can cut it. And I thought I had the picture of them with the scissors, but I don't. Their version of the underworld seems pretty close to how Greek poets conceived of it. The monsters that we traditionally think of Heracles fighting show up, at least some of them. The centaurs are a huge deal in early Greek mythology, and this guy is well designed. He's harassing poor Meg. The Lernian Hydra is a really good scene with I think, very subtly done CGI, and it's based off of something that shows up on pottery 2,000 years ago. And then Cerberus obviously is pretty prominent. This scene that's obviously coded as it has like kind of messianic Christian allegory kind of energy to it, but it's something that's probably not drawn from Hercules' his own myth, but instead Orpheus rescuing his dead girlfriend Eurydice from the underworld, where the whole thing is that he was not allowed Luke to look behind him to check on Eurydice, or else she'd vanish or get like sucked back into the underworld. So they add this to the Hercules movie, except like it works and he is able to save Meg. But yeah, like grabbing Meg's soul out of like the river Styx and putting it back in a body, I don't think that's based on anything that has that shows up in mythology. This is too dark to see. Again, there's a scene early on before we cut ahead and Hercules is like strong, like fully grown or whatever, where he goes to communicate with his dad because his adopted parents told him Zeus is his dad, and he's in the temple and he like gets down on his knees and he's like doing this. And so that's just the Disney animators being like, well, we can't have him slit the throat of a bull. Guys, this is so weird. Bailey and Luke is just making this so awkward. It's like it's such a small amount of kids that we know exactly who's talking when it's happening. It's weird. Like all of your classmates think you're weird if like you're the only person they can hear instead of the teacher. So yeah, obviously they weren't gonna have Hercules like slit the throat of a calf. But what he's doing is kind of like coded as the way a person in the Western world who's Christian would pray, which is fine. That's called shorthand, and like I don't blame the animators at all. The Titans, who are like kind of the big bad guys beyond Hades, who we need to talk about. They're kind of an amalgamation of mythological titans and giants, because they don't seem to actually. I don't think they're supposed to be like the parents of the Olympians. So they look cool, but they're just like very loosely based on the idea of what a titan is. Because Titanomachy is when the Olympians fought the Titans. But like, I don't know if I pictured the Titans like this. Maybe like they're like bigger than the Olympians or something. Hades in general is the bad guy, whereas who's the bad guy in the actual myth? It's just Hera. Like Hera's the bad guy in the myth.
She got cheated on.
Well, you probably missed at some point that she gets back at Hercules by making him go crazy and kill his whole parents. Kill his whole family. So she's the bad guy in the myth, whereas Hades is the bad guy in the movie. And that's just Disney looking at it and like from the perspective of like a simplistic, like what a child would understand. that from a Western perspective, that Hades, he must be the bad guy because like Hades equals Satan, right? Or like the devil. And of course, that's not really how it is. Hades, he's a bad guy to Persephone, and maybe he's a jerk to Orpheus and Eurydice. But other than that, he's not really like worse than any of the other gods. He's not really he's not even in charge of judging the dead or like sending you to Hades. He just kind of like pays the health, I think. I have not watched. Well, I tried to watch it once. I wasn't in the right headspace.
It was okay.
It was okay. So I feel like I would think if I watched it all the way through.
It didn't interest me, honestly. I feel like it was kind of like Disney being like, wait, you gotta find an idea.
Well, I do feel like Pixar, yeah, they seem like a little out of ideas or something.
They were kind of like, yes.
All right, guys, any other thoughts on Hercules before? We're going to move on to a little Latin. A little actual Latin. I know, me too. Is there any other thoughts? I think I would have thoughts if I just simply went back to the era chart. I want to see what's after 2007. Is that the CGI era?
I feel like that's like kind of like the 3D animation.
Is that Frozen Pixar? Yeah. I just Chicken Run. Is that Chicken Run?
After 2007, I think right after 2007, I think 2008 is when Ethan Robinson comes out.
I don't know that. All right. No one's raising their hand to share with the whole class a Disney thoughts. So.
I have lots of thoughts about Disney. There's a movie on Netflix about how Pixar started.
That'd be cool.
They tell the Pixar story and like basically, Pixar actually started because they made this computer. They made this like really high-tech computer. And they started, the first movie they really worked on was actually the Star Wars movies. They worked on the Star Trek spaceships and the Star Wars spaceships.
Industrial Lights and Magic or whatever. Lucas's or Spielberg's company. All right, guys, let's actually talk about Latin. I know it feels lame to do that, but that's what we got to do. Yeah, but anyway, the last thing I'll say is like towards the end of the Disney Renaissance, that's when Pixar's starting. Bugs Life, Toy Story, and what's the third movie? Bugs Life was the first.
Story, and then
Monsters Inc.
Monsters Inc. Yeah.
Those were all coming out when I was younger than y'all. It was a good time. All right, Sarah, how are you feeling about chapter 17? How are you feeling about qui by quad relative pronouns? Because we glossed over that chapter pretty quickly. So the sentence is completely covered up by this thing, but the sentence, the man who was from Italy was my dad. Just to be clear, this is not too bad. It's just you got to be ready to pivot with qui by quad in terms of if you're translating as who, that, or which. And it usually just has to do with like if it's a person or not that it's referring back to. And this sentence, the who is referring back to man. So we would just go with qui in the nominative. So the beer, the man, who, qui, erat ex Italia was from Italy, right, Luke? Was erat meus pater, my father, is how that would be. So a lot of the time, the relative clause will be right next to its antecedent, which it's referring to. And if the editors are being nice, Keaton, they'll position them next to each other with a comma interrupting them so that we know that the relative clause is quad to four. So let's just do like one or this is actually a sentence I designed myself to help you guys encapsulate chapter 17 and 18. So what is the student what is the subject, Avery or Sarah? And this is as concepts that you don't know, Avery, but we'll try to catch you up. But this you could answer. What do you think? Yeah, just scipula, good. Quad, what do you guess quad's antecedent is, Sarah? I'm going to tell y'all now, this is neuter. This is neuter plural, so it's students. Actually, it's not a single female student. So quad there, what do you think its antecedent is? What do you think it's going to be referring to? You have to guess. Yeah. It's too easy of a question that almost doesn't even sound like one. Bailey, do you know what I'm asking? Huh? What word? B word, Bennett. No, so its antecedent will be outside of the relative clause. I've already underlined, because the comma made it so clear, I've underlined the relative clause. So something outside of the relative clause will be its antecedent. To what, anyone out loud? It's just a scipula. So we're going to be talking about the students. So the students, shall we use who, which, or that for quad? A quad can be all sorts of different cases and genders that reflect certain things. But it's kind of the more important thing is just to figure out if we need who, which, or that. So students, are students a who, which, or that? Yeah, we can probably just use two. So the students who, and then do contour. Ooh, okay. Then it just means well. What voice is do contour? Sadie or Callie, maybe? What voice? Active or passive? Elena? So if I'm asking at all, it's probably a giveaway. Chris? Right, it's passive, right? I wouldn't really be asking if it was active, honestly, about voice. That's the thing that we learned about in chapter 8, R, restore, more, contour. So do contour is from dokeo to teach, but here it is passive. By the way, guys, I'll be looking at a second weekly word log on Friday. So it should just be the backside of the first one you started, or if like you have that first one, you just like draw lines under where you left off. But I'll be way less lenient about this one. So starting now is when you can start filling that up. But anyway, the students who, something about, well, so dokeo means to teach, right? So how can we translate do contour, Chloe or Alyssa? It's not the students who teach well. That would be active. That would be dokint. We have this weird new chapter 18 style ending that makes it passive. So it's the students who not teach. Will make it future. It's not future tense. That'd be like doke buntour, actually, like bunch cake. Any 1.5 kids want to try it? How do we make it passive? Lucy? Are taught. So that's all we have to do with passive. Once you recognize it's passive, which hopefully y'all can do because it doesn't look like OST must have been. It's like different. It's R, restore, more, many, intour, which is like totally different. And so instead of they actively teach or are teaching, because you could use R for active as well, if they are taught. So it's a form of is or to be. It's going to be is, am, or are, plus the what we think of as the simple past form of the verb. So the students who are taught well, and then let's just take Ago as do here. What tense is Ago, Parker, or Daniel, if it's third conjugation? What tense is it? The E. Oh, second. The tense. Oh, wow. Tense. No, that'd be what? Future, yeah, perfect. It turns to like eggy. Remember, Parker? It's like Ago, eggy. Like it has an E. So it's just future because of the E for this third. So anyway, do you want to finish translating it, Lucy? We'll do what? What's the DO of Ago? Yeah, we'll do like much or a lot of things in life. Good. Yeah, so basically we just have a relative clause there in the middle. Shouldn't be hard to spot because of the commas. Now, picture if the commas weren't there, it actually becomes a much more chaotic feeling if the commas aren't there. Then you just have to know that like as soon as you see quad, that it's probably the beginning of relative clause, and that it would end where the verb is. So the relative clause has its own verb, has its own subject. In this case, the relative clause or verb is the subject, and its antecedent is the subject of the main clause. The main clause is just students will do much in life. But they add in this little relative clause, which again, the important thing to know is that like it has its own verb, its own subject, potentially its own direct object, and that quick quad is like who, which, or that, sometimes who, sometimes of which, sometimes whom. It's accusative, ablative, or dative, and it's referring to a person. All right, so you're all caught up on that chapter now. Good. This is the chapter 17 vocab, so I'll pick like 7-ish words from this, and 7-ish words from these chapter 18 words for the quiz on Friday. So maybe after we do first declension every morning this week, we'll do the Quizlet, even though that was supposed to be boring. But we can flip the Quizlets for these, maybe. A lot of verbs to look at. I'll be picking some verbs. Verbs are always the things I don't want kids to have like slip through the cracks in terms of like not learning them at any point. So look at, and the verbs are always at the bottom of the list. So focus on the verbs and maybe the conjunctions, right? We have, well, Dana is an adverb technically, but it feels like a conjunction. Then, this is annoying. That's Ito quickly. That's an adverb. Out as conjunctions. I might put out on the quiz. Anyway, and this is chapter 18, guys. We have 2 weeks to practice it now. But this is the entire concept that these are restore, more, many, intor endings. Change the voice of a verb. It's a parameter of verbs that we did not even know about until chapter 18. We have person, number, tense, and mood. Mood is the one that we don't talk about much either, because that's just indicative or imperative. But we will get the third mood in chapter 27 when this year is finally ending, and it'll be a good time for it to end because the textbook is straight up horrifyingly hard after 28. But so yeah, I am verb, you are verb, it is verb, we are verb, y'all are verb, they are verb. It's been proven to me that it's harder than I think it is to form these or like translate these passive verbs, but really not too bad. Just think of like the active version versus the passive. I eat. Well, that's not a good one. I kill versus I am killed. You kill versus you are killed. The helping verb changed to are. Subtle, but I guess it's worth noting. He kills versus he is killed. And then it's R on the middle side. And many is really easy to spot. This one's like, it really stands out, right? You would know it's for sure second person plural passive at that point. But the other ones aren't too bad either. It's kind of all about getting that R in there while still keeping something of the OSP, must have said. Imperfect are super chill because they all have BA squeezed in, so was and were are the two helping verbs you're needing to bust out. Instead of am, is, or are, it's just was or were. And really, it just was for first third singular. I was verb, you were verb. These should be easy to spot. These are kind of nasty, though. The thing with future is like we're mostly seeing BI or bunch cake in front of the same passive ending. But BERIS is really awful. That's future passive. Truly, truly horrible. But any questions? I think spotting the tense is actually almost easier than necessarily knowing it's passive in the first place. So active verbs, sentences, subjects, verb, a direct object, or passive verb subjects are verb. By an ablative. Let me add that real quick to this super helpful infographic here. By, and it's going to be an ablative of means or manner. I don't know why it's all in caps, but let's keep it that way and make it green. So yeah, when the verb is passive, the only thing that expresses what is actually performing the verb's action would be an ablative thing. It would not be the subject because of now the action is happening to the subject. But yeah, so Avery, what do you think? Does that seem like impossible? Were you able to follow this at all? Or you're like, no, I like straight up would need way more time to understand what this passive voice nonsense is. Yeah, oh, for sure. Because, yeah, it's boring, but in this class, like, we were actually further in the textbook at one point, but this is around the time when the kids who were at one point already at this chapter seemed to have, like, trouble with the grammar and the translation. So we went back. So if they had trouble, then, yeah, it might be hard for you, but I don't know, maybe like one or two quick tutoring sessions could help out a lot, Avery. Let's do like one or two. Oh, the bell's like just about to ring. Sadie? Is it good?
Me and Luke are at the same time. It was kind of he was watching. He was watching sleep.
Is it about me and or I can't see I can't read this word. No, it's not about any of you. Good, because it actually seems very touching potentially that somebody is.
You know who it's from? Say it.
No. It's like very personal stuff.
Okay, then that's why you say it.
That's why you say it.
But like not really in a fun way, more kind of like like interesting. Like somebody's maybe having a interesting something happen to I don't know, and they're telling their friend about. They can. Quia means because they can. What does this mean? They are able. Oh, they are able because. So okay. Yeah, this is to seem, not to see, but like seem when it's passive. All right, guys. Good class. Good Monday. Have a good rest of the day. What? No, it's not. Oh. I don't even know.
Is this technically uniform approved?
Do the what?
Is this uniform approved?
Oh, to me it is. That doesn't look anything like a hood. For me. But I can't speak for others.
too.